Jazakumullah khairan. Before we begin, can I ask Brother Karnit and Uncle Abbas to kindly turn your videos on, please? I spoke to Uncle Abbas about this before. And Karnit, this is a surprise to you, but I mean, it should be no surprise to you because you know me by now. I just need faces to see, inshallah. That would be much appreciated. And anybody else can also do that if you so wish. It's just obligatory upon them, and it's mustahab for everybody else, inshallah. Um, I'm also going to add to the chat here. Um, this is the Dropbox link that was sent to me. I posted some files. There you are. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. I posted some files to the admin, and they sent me this link. So I assume that the files that they sent are already uploaded into your Dropbox account, and there are a number of files there. You're more than welcome to open it if you so wish. I will show you nonetheless. Okay, so in that file, you'll find Al-Fawzul Kabir fi Usul al-Tafsir in English. It was translated, but I must tell you that I have never really relied upon the translation. I think when it comes to books like this, Allah alam, but the translation for me isn't half as good as the Arabic, but you know, I mean, it's there for now. I've also given you an Arabic English dictionary for the Quran's terminology. So, in other words, vocab from the Quran and how the Quran uses it. We'll have a look at that in a moment, if there's some time, inshallah. And then I gave you. Okay, so that's the previous lesson there, and then there's Tafsir Ibn Kathir in one file. It's a small-ish file. So you have the entire Tafsir Ibn Kathir. It's a .chm file. It's not a very common file format. You should be able to open that up, and then you have the entire Quran, the tafsir of the entire Quran from Tafsir Ibn Kathir. And then I gave you a section of Ma'arif al-Quran, the specific section on the portion of the Quran that we are busy with. I think it's from Surah Qadr till Kafirun, and obviously we are currently busy with Surah Bayyinah. Now, a resource that I want you to, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, you can let me know, but I'll share my screen in a moment. There's a website that's going to be, I'm going to use this website to teach from. I think it's laid out quite nicely, especially for our purposes. Have you seen this website before, the Corpus Quran? Has any of the other teachers employed it? Yes?
Maulana Khalil did show it to us. I use it
Okay.
frequently to cheat on the homework.
Okay, I see. Okay. Khair. Thank you for your candor. Nonetheless, as a resource, I think it's pretty good. This wasn't available when I was in first year, but we had our own way of cheating as well. We had an app. I think the app is pretty dated by now, but it served the same purpose. So for class purpose, we will use this just to look at some of the Arabic concepts. Now, bear in mind that we have a few dimensions of the surah that we are going to approach, that we need to cover, and we only have 45 minutes in which to do so, right? So that's tricky because in that 45 minutes it will be recitation, it will be translation, it will be Arabic, it will be tafsir, it will be application of the Arab, questions and answers, etc. So it's quite a lot. Okay, so I generally follow a standard format. Okay, our classes should be somewhat more smooth as we commence forward. Currently, we're still kind of getting familiar with the methodology, and then one of the important aspects that Maulana Khalil specifically asked me to give focus to is the thematic approach to the Quran, meaning approaching the Quran as in the form of themes as opposed to atomistically. In other words, as opposed to taking every word, every verse, and looking at that as an individual unit, because it's very difficult to piece the puzzle together on your own, especially if you're a first-time student. So bear with us, inshallah. You will become familiar with the methodology that I've chosen to employ, and then things will kind of smoothen out. But at this point in time, just try to follow along, and don't be afraid to ask any questions. I'm very approachable. I don't always seem like I'm very approachable, but I am very approachable. I'm not going to judge you for not knowing anything or for whatever you think I might judge you for. I won't, inshallah ta'ala. So yeah, I'm going to use this because I like the way that it sets things out. Now, last week we did the first 3 verses, and we covered it basically in recitation, in translation, and in some of the Arabic concepts. So, as a quick revision, I'm going to open up the Quran. Okay, let me share a different screen with you. So this is from Ma'arif al-Quran. You can see this, right? You can see the PDF document. Is that correct?
Yes, Malana.
Okay. So this is from Ma'arif al-Quran. It's one of the few complete English tafasir available. Some of them have been translated into English, um, and this is one of them. So you have Tafsir ibn Kathir, you have this Ma'arif al-Quran, and you have Fi Dhilal al-Quran, in the shade of the Quran. These are predominantly utilized by Sunni Muslims. They don't have any modernist agendas or any Shia agendas or any specific type of agendas. They tend to be quite universal, right? In the shade of the Quran is also there's some political background there as well, but I'm not going to get into any of that. I just want you to benefit from the tafsir itself. Okay. And I think it's nice and concise and well rounded. So I shared this with you. And of course, as we proceed, I'll share the other sections with you as well. If you're interested in the entire tafsir, it comes in a number of different PDFs in different sections. I can maybe give you my email address and then I can make it available to you individually, inshallah, and perhaps eventually send it into that folder as well. So, Surah Al Bayyinah, right? Remember the word Al Bayyinah, we said is the clear evidence. Here you can see the clear proof. We'll get into the other book to see more meanings of that in a moment. Let's just do the recitation. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لم يكن الذين كفروا من أهل الكتاب والمشركين منفكين حتى تأتيهم البينة. رسول من الله يتلو صحفا مطهرة فيها كتب قيمة. وما تفرق الذين أوتوا الكتاب إلا من بعد ما جاءتهم البينة. وما أمروا إلا ليعبدوا الله مخلصين له الدين حنفاء ويقيموا الصلاة ويؤتوا الزكاة وذلك دين القيمة. إن الذين كفروا من أهل الكتاب والمشركين في نار جهنم خالدين فيها أولئك هم شر البرية. إن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات أولئك هم خير البرية. جزاؤهم عند ربهم جنات عدن تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها أبدا رضي الله عنهم ورضوا عنه ذلك لمن خشي ربه. صدق الله مولانا العظيم. Those who believed from among the people of the book, those who believed from among the people of the book and the polytheists were not expected to desist, to stop, unless there came to them a clear proof, a messenger from Allah who recites the purified scrolls containing therein straight writings, upright writings, correct writings. And those who were given the book did not disagree, but after the clear proof came to them. Also can be translated as they did not divide. They were not divided until after the clear proof had come to them. While they were not ordered but to worship Allah, making their submission exclusive for Him with integrity and to establish salah and pay zakah. and that is the way of the straight religion. Surely those who disbelieve from among the people of the book and the polytheists will be in the fire of Jahannam, in which they will be living forever. Allahumma ahfadna, Allah save us from that. Those are the worst of all human beings. As for those who believed and did righteous deeds, they are the best of all human beings. Allahumma ja'alna minhum. May Allah make us of those. Their reward is with their Lord. It will be gardens of eternity beneath which rivers flow, in which they will be abiding forever. Allah is pleased with them, and they are pleased with Him. That is for the one who has awe of his Lord. So that's the basic translation of the surah. And as a theme, okay, one of the, I know I mentioned the themes of Shawaliullah Dehlawi, which is over here. In the first chapter, the explanation of the five sciences. Okay, we'll talk a bit about that. That's going to be your homework for me, inshallah ta'ala, to read that, but we'll get to that in a moment. One of the strategies for finding a thematic approach to a surah that I personally love because I find it to be consistent is looking at the name of the surah. Now, the names of the surah are generally going to indicate one very important feature of the surah. It does not necessarily encompass every dimension of the surah. It doesn't necessarily cover everything, especially of the longer surah. But what it does indicate is one of the important themes in the surah. And sometimes the word isn't actually mentioned in the surah itself. For example, Surah Al Ikhlas. The word Ikhlas doesn't appear in Surah Al Ikhlas, right? But yet, it's the name of the surah because Ikhlas, sincerity, pure religion, right? Pure devotion to Allah, that is in fact the crux of that surah, even though the word ikhlas doesn't appear in the surah itself. Now, if you look at a longer example, right? Surah Baqarah, you might think, okay, but now how is the cow a major theme of the surah? So it takes a bit of thinking. It's not necessarily always going to be spelled out, always explicitly obvious and so on. No, like with Surah Al-Baqarah, if I were to ask you, and yeah, I want you to respond, so get ready to unmute your microphones. What is this word, the Baqarah, really reflecting? You know, what is it a story about? It's a story about the cow. But more than just a story about the cow, who is it referring to in that story? Fadda.
Is it those who believed in other than Allah because he used the cow as another deity, Maulana?
More specifically,
Bani
Bismillah.
The Yahud.
The Yahud, yes. Because in Surah Baqarah, who does Allah speak about almost through the entire surah? The Bani Israel, right? If you're familiar with Surah Baqarah, even if you don't know the meanings of the surah, just if you listen to it, Ya Bani Israel, it goes through the entire surah. It was, you know, when I studied first year and we did this, we started from the beginning of the Quran and then we worked our way towards the end. And when eventually I was asking myself, like, so when do we talk about the Muslims? Because this surah is like constantly speaking about the Bani Israel. And that, as you know, somebody's mic is unmuted and I can hear them. That is one of the primary themes of Surah Al-Baqarah. Is there like a cross post coming in here from another class or something? Let's see if I can figure out who's unmuted. Okay, it's gone now. طيب, so looking at Surah Al-Bayyinah, the word Al-Bayyinah, the clear sign, the clear proof, has more meaning than just that. Okay, I'm going to open up another PDF now, and I've shared this with you as well. It's a very useful resource. Let me just get to it quickly. You can let me know if you have it already, if it's been shared with you already. Here we go. Bismillah. Have you seen this book already? Arabic English Dictionary of Quranic Usage. Brother Qanit?
No, Maulana.
Okay, so you're going to find this handy, inshallah. What you can do with this book, it's like a dictionary, you know, like your Hanswehr. So you look at the words in the same way. So you will look Hamza, Ba, and so on. At the top, you will see the letters. There you go. Hamza, Tha, Lam, right? So we're looking for Bayyinah. So of course we need to go to Ba. And it's generally going to be Bana. Unfortunately, there's no way to get there in a shorter way. You just have to scroll down. Okay, so there you have Ba, and see it comes here. Probably not. Okay, I'm going to leave you to do that. This is taking a bit of time, but what you'll find beautiful about this dictionary. Let's look at one example, right? Look at the word bahar. Can you all see this here? Should I make it bigger? Is it big enough to see?
We can read that one.
Fine.
Everybody, everybody can enlarge it on their screen.
Okay, khair.
If they can't see.
So if you look at this as an example, right? So you find the word bahara. Not only does it break the word up for you in terms of meaning, it's not just going to give you the one meaning of the word, so ocean. It gives you enough synonyms in the English language that are appropriately used as a translation of this word. Ocean, sea, great river, great expanse of water. Because it's not as simple as an ocean. Bahar also means a great expanse of water. It can also refer to lake. Look, it can even refer to a generous person, right? Somebody with great knowledge. I'm sure you've heard when somebody says, you know, he's a bahar, he's an ocean of knowledge. That term exists there as well. To slit an animal's ear in ritual. These are all words that refer there. Now, even better, it goes further and says, of this root, 5 forms occur 42 times in the Quran. Right? So you can see the etymology of the word, bahara, and then the different derivatives of that word and how they appear in the Quran. So bahrun, 33 times, bahran, 5 times, bihar, twice, abhur, once, and bahiratun, once. So I find that to be very useful. Sometimes it gives you even more detail. It will give you an example of the Quran. Look at this word here, bahrun. So now you get into the various specific words. This is a noun. It's the plural is bihar, and there's a plural of paucity, abhur. And then you have the example in the Quran, وَهُوَ الَّذِي جَعَلَ لَكُمُ النُّجُومَ لِتَهْتَدُوا بِهَا في ظلمات البر والبحر, and so on. So it's a very, very useful word, useful dictionary to get into the nitty-gritty of one specific word, right? I like to use this sometimes in preparation for a khutbah. So for example, if I'm speaking about, what was the last one I spoke about? Trust, right? Tawakkul. And then you look at the root letters of tawakkul is wakala. Then you can actually see all the different derivatives, where they come in the Quran, how often it is mentioned, and so on. Very, very useful. So I shared that with you as well. And I shared it specifically so that you can look into the word bayyinah. Because the word bayyinah, there are so many other words that come from it. Bayyinah, we spoke about this last time. And this is important. Why? Okay, I'm mentioning all of this because the word Bayyinah is in fact the theme of this surah, right? If we're not looking at Shah Waliullah's themes now, we're just looking at the major topic in this surah. As we said, Surah Alaq speaks about what happened and how revelation started, okay? How it happened and how it started. Surah Qadr, right? Inna anzalnahu fi laylatil qadr speaks about when revelation started. Al-Bayyinah gives you, listen carefully, the crux of what revelation contains. I repeat, Surah Al-Bayyinah gives you the crux of what revelation contains, right? And I think this is probably why Ustad Numan Ali Khan, called this school Bayyinah. Because in this surah, right, it basically breaks down revelation to you in its purest form. Like, this is a summary of the Quran. Now, there are a few places in the Quran that you can look at and actually say, you know what, here's the Quran. One of those places is Surah Al-Fatiha. Okay, in that sense, Surah Al-Fatiha is a Ummul Kitab. Surah Al-Bayyinah also presents you with a form of summary of the Quran. Without getting into the specifics, what is this surah really saying? It's saying that, look here, we are not all the same. There's the disbelievers, there's the Ahlul Kitab, there's the Mushrikun, okay? And there is the Bayyinah, which we said is Rasulun min Allahi yatlu suhufan mutahhara, the messenger from God reciting the purified scriptures. That combination there is your Bayyinah. So you have La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. So the Prophet ﷺ's role is emphasized there, and also the text of the Quran is emphasized, how that is in fact our strongest evidence, our strongest argument, our strongest proof. Moving on from that, fiha kutubun qayyima, in it is upright scriptures, meaning that's where we find our guidance. Like in Surah Fatiha, ihdina siratal mustaqim, that's where we find our guidance. Then those who disbelieve from the people of the book, or those who were given the book, they did not differ, they did not divide until after the clear signs had come to them. We'll speak about that again, that's more in the specifics. وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. Now this is where the real heart of the surah lies. The surah is 8 ayat. This is the 5th ayat. It lies right in the middle, and it is the heart of what Allah wants from us. وَمَا أُمِرُوا. They are not commanded. They are not commanded. From the word amr, right? Amr verb. Umiru, amara, ya'muru, umira, yu'maru, umira, umira, umiru. They were not commanded. إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ, except to worship God. Interestingly, if you look up the word abd in that dictionary that I showed you, tell me, how would you translate the word abd? Anyone, quickly?
Isn't Abd a slave?
Abd is a slave. Now, how do you translate illa liya'budullaha?
If to worship Allah.
That is your common translation there. Now, when you study Arabic like you are now, you become a bit more technical. And some people may see it as, that's semantics and so on. But for the student of Arabic, these technicalities that you're going to see this now in the word liya'budu. These technicalities make the world of difference. They make wallahi al-azim, they make the world of difference. The word worship is not found in this word here, right? In this word here, in the Arabic language, the etymology of this word is abada, which you yourself had now just, you've stated this is a slave, an abd. But when you translate it to English, then the word slave disappears, right? And it changes to worship. And if you look at the English word worship and the etymology of that word, you find that it comes from the Old English word wirthskap, which basically means an act of devotion. Now, we get that we do acts of devotion, but are you always doing an act of devotion? No. You can pray now, then it's an act of devotion, and when you're done praying, you're no longer doing an act of devotion. But a slave is never done being a slave. A slave is a slave for as long as they are a slave. When they're eating, they are a slave. When they're drinking, when they are in the bathroom, when they are sleeping, when they're resting, they're still in the condition of being a slave, right? So when we speak about our ubudiyah, it's not our worshipping of Allah. It is our enslavement to Allah. It is our serving God. So a better, more accurate translation, albeit technical, is they were not commanded except to serve Allah. They were not commanded except to enslave themselves to Allah, not just to worship Allah. It gives you the idea. Look here, I must just make tasbih whole day, tahmeed whole day, dhikr whole day, make salah whole day, read Quran whole day. Where does physical well-being fall into that? Where does good nutrition practices fit into that? Where does good sleeping practices fit into that? Where does intimate relations with one's spouse fit into that? Yes, we can argue that those things are all acts of ibadat, okay? But they are not acts of worship in the sense that praying is an act of worship, right? It's a different form of worship. For a believer, it is better to have that understanding, إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ, except to enslave themselves to God, to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We think of ourselves as bondsmen and bondswomen in the service of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the only thing that we've been commanded with. وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ. How? مُخْلِصِينَ, sincerely. Mukhlis, from the word khalasa, means to strip everything else away and to leave behind only what? Only that sincerity for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So another way of translating this would be purely, not just sincerely, but also purely, lahu, for him. Ad-deen is devotion, is the religion. So وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. حُنَفَاءَ, more specifically, the word hunafa from hanif means to disincline from all other false deities, right? All other false deities, and to incline only to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and no one else, right? وَيُقِيمُ الصَّلَاةِ, to establish salah, وَيُؤْتُ الزَّكَاةِ, to give alms to the poor, وَذَلِكَ دِينُ الْقَيِّمَةِ, and that there is your upright religion. That's the heart of the surah. It's telling us this is the crux of revelation. What does the Quran want from you? The Quran wants from us to realize that we are serving God. That's our purpose. It is to serve the will of God, right? Sincerely and only. That's the primary message of the Quran. And disincline from false gods. That's part of the primary message of the Quran. And then there are acts of worship through which we do it, right? And an example is given, salah, zakah, and this is deen. Obviously, there are other facets of deen as well. Riba, the way we deal with one another, that zina, many aspects, but these are the examples given. So this surah, Al-Bayyinah, the theme of the surah is the crux of revelation. Is everybody with me? And that ayah that we just did now, that's the crux of the surah. Okay? And then Allah speaks about, okay, so that's deen, but now you're not all going to be the same. There's going to be different groups. There's going to be إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا مِنْ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ وَالْمُشْرِكِينَ فِي نَارِ جَهَنَّمَ خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا أُولَٰئِكَ هُمْ شَرُّ الْبَرِيَّةِ. Don't think, by the way, I'm speeding through, not expecting you to follow, because I'm just speaking about the theme of the surah. We will do ayah for ayah again, okay? I'm just doing the theme. So Allah speaks about the year after, that there's different groups here in the dunya, but in the year after, there's only one group going to Jannah. Those who disbelieve of the people of the book and the mushrikun, فِي نَارِ جَهَنَّمَ خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا أُولَٰئِكَ هُمْ شَرُّ الْبَرِيَّةِ. And those who believe and they do righteous deeds, أُولَٰئِكَ هُمْ خَيْرُ الْبَرِيَّةِ. They are the best of creation. And what will be the reward? The reward will be eternal Jannah. They will be therein forever, and Allah will be pleased with them. They will be pleased with Him. That is for the one who has khashya Rabbah. They have khashya of Allah. This surah indicates the crux of deen, the crux of the Quran, the crux of deen. And therefore it is called Al-Bayyinah, the clear proof, the clear sign, that which separates, that which distinguishes, that which makes manifestly clear. Okay, so that was the theme of the entire surah. Are there any questions on the theme before we go back to ayah for ayah and Arabic concepts? Any questions on that specifically?
Maulana, just I don't know whether I follow, but the first part of the surah, is that just the introduction, or because my notes that I just wrote now is that it's almost like the thematic, the Bayyinah, the crutch of that the surah is starting from verse 2. So
No.
verse 1.
Okay, so I understand what you're saying. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to explain now how each ayah fits into that theme. It's an introduction to the surah, but the crux doesn't start from verse 2. It starts from verse 1. Allah's setting the stage. He's setting the stage of revelation. Because the revelation, the Quran, didn't fall from the sky at the beginning of time. It came into existence in our realm, in our world, within a society that already existed and already had their beliefs and their ways and so on. And you will see in this tafsir, the very first topic, because it's formed in different topics. Look, what does he say? Situation of the people of the book and of the pagan Arabs before the advent of the final messenger. Do you understand now?
Yes,
So
Malana, makes
it's yeah, it's part of the theme. It's setting the stage. You can't just all of a sudden Rasulun min Allahi, right? Because this Rasul, he came into a context, he came into a world, and this world needs to be defined. So now that we've done and in the overarching theme of the surah, now we've already covered the first 3 verses, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. Munfakina. Now we see that this is where the Mufassirun, they differ tremendously regarding this. The disbelievers and the people of the book, or rather, the disbelievers from among the people of the book and from among the polytheists, they were not going to stop until clear signs had come to them, until the clear proof had come to them. They, the Mufassirun, are like perplexed, like, what is this? They're not going to stop from what? Until the clear signs had come. So most of them said they're not going to stop with their kufr, right? They're not going to stop with their shirk until clear signs had come to them. But then it doesn't make sense, because even though clear signs had come to them, they still didn't stop. The Quran came, they still didn't stop. So then how do we understand that? So there's a lot of different theories and ways of explaining it. I'm going to just give you the one that I settled upon that makes sense to me. But that's why I'm sharing the tafasir with you, so that you can get the different perspectives as well. My understanding is that the distinction between those who believe and those who don't believe, and the disbelievers from the people of the book compared to the disbelievers from the mushrikun, none of these distinctions were crystallized and finalized until the final revelation came. Right? How so? You see, for you to be included among the believers in the time of Nabi Musa means that you need to believe in Nabi Musa and all the prophets before him. Then you're a believer, you're a Muslim, right? There's no prophet after him yet, because it's still in the time of Nabi Musa. But then, if the next Nabi comes and you reject that Nabi, now you're no longer a believer, even though you believed in the Anbiya before them. Because at one point now you made kufr, right? And then look at the time of Nabi Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. Everyone who believed in Nabi Isa and the message of Nabi Isa and all of the prophets' messages and the prophets before him, they were the believers of their time. But the moment Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam comes and he brings the message of the Quran, at any point now, if you reject him or his message or anything that he brings sallallahu alaihi wasallam, now you're a disbeliever, even though you were just a believer before that, because it's no longer sufficient to be a follower of Christ. Now you need to be a follower of all the Anbiya, and this includes Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is how there's only one Allah, one message, one Quran, one Islam. Allah didn't create many religions. Humans created many religions, in the sense of, we distinguish the one from the other. So Islam is just a continuation, right, of the previous Anbiya. And that final message was the final distinction between who are the disbelievers and who are the mushrikun, and who are the believers, and who are the Ahlul Kitab, and who are the Yahud, and who are the Nasara, because this final revelation is the final revelation. There's nothing after it. Now there's no longer going to be a distinction between believers and disbelievers that is defined after this definition. We have the definition. It's finalized, people. If you didn't get the memo, we're there, right? There's no distinction after this. And in that way, they would not desist from the state of being in disbelief, the state of being in shirk, the state of being of Ahlul Kitab or whatever, because the definition that makes that distinction has now come. This is further emphasized. Okay, so what was the Bayyinah again? Rasulun min Allahi yatlu suhufan mutahhara. I think we've covered that sufficiently. Fiha kutubun qayyimah is also straightforward, saying that basically this is another way of saying that in the Quran you have absolute truth, you have definitive messages, clear-cut guidance. This is the way, right? Now this verse that comes now, verse number 4, re-emphasizes what I just said about the distinction that is drawn. وَمَا تَفَرَّقَ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ إِلَّا مِن بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَتْهُمُ الْبَيِّنَةُ. Those who disbelieve, rather, those who have been given the book, مَا تَفَرَّقَ, they were not divided, right? إِلَّا مِن بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَتْهُمُ الْبَيِّنَةُ, until the Bayyinah had come to them. Okay, and of course, I'm not going to translate Bayyinah as clear proof anymore because you have a definition for it from the Quran. And the best form of tafsir of the Quran is the Quran itself. There's no better definition for Bayyinah than Rasulun min Allahi yatlu suhufan mutahhara. Okay, now if you were to look into history, even the seerah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you would find that the Yahud as well as the Nasara were in fact divided. There wasn't like one brand of Christianity and one brand of Judaism, even then. So, how does this verse then make sense? They were only divided after the Bayyinah had come to them. Again, they were divided in different senses, yes, but the absolute division of them being outside of the haqq, outside of the manifest truth, outside of what Allah wants for humanity, that was finalized when Rasulullah came and brought them the Quran. Another way of understanding this is in a contemporary context. If a person in the world today dies and has never been exposed to the deen of Islam in its true form, they've never been given the da'wah. Now, often people use the example of, some tribe in the Amazon jungle and so on. It doesn't only have to be a tribe in the Amazon jungle. It could be a poor soul in the middle of North America, okay, whose only exposure to Islam ever was through the media, okay? That is not true Islam. We all know this. If that person was never given da'wah by the Muslims, there are many scholars who believe that that is sufficient to categorize that person not as a disbeliever, because they never had a chance to disbelieve. They were never given the da'wah. If somebody had brought them the message of Islam, and here's where the interesting thing comes in. If somebody had brought them the message of Islam, they gave them da'wah, they taught them about La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They taught them about the fact that we as Muslims, we believe in Allah and His angels and the books and the messengers and the last day and all the things that we believe in. And then the person rejects. Now they are a disbeliever. So it's a kind of a funny thing where the person's kind of better off, It seems as though, I shouldn't say that, it seems as though the person is better off not knowing than when they know and they reject. Okay, that's on the face of it. It seems like that. But we all know that in the akhirah, a person who doesn't know and has never been given da'wah, that person will be tested in the akhirah, which is, that's not something we should wish for, right? Similarly, if a person studies deen, they're just going about their life, they're doing whatever they want, and then all of a sudden now they start studying deen. Now things become clear to them. Oh my God, this thing that I've been doing all my life for an income is actually wrong. Now all of a sudden they're troubled. They feel as though they might have been better off not knowing. But the reality is that they were not better off not knowing. Ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is not bliss. So in this sense, al-bayyinah really is that which which distinguishes, that which draws distinction. Okay, and of course now, alhamdulillah, we have already covered وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ حُنَفَاءَ وَيُقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَيُؤْتُوا الزَّكَاةَ وَذَلِكَ دِينُ الْقَيِّمَةِ. But we have not covered it word for word verbatim, which we will continue with next time, inshallah ta'ala. But I'm happy with what we covered now, because now you've got a thematic approach for not only this one surah, but a way to approach your other surah as well. You look at the title of the surah and you try to discover what this title represents. Like, what does this title really represent? Okay, and from that you try to see what the surah is trying to say in light of that theme. And that will give you a better holistic approach of the surah, as opposed to an atomistic approach where you're looking at ayah for ayah, trying to determine a narrative, like we are kind of used to when we read prose. It's not a fiction book, right? And it's not a non-fiction book. This is the Quran. It's divine. It's different. So the homework that I spoke to you about, firstly, very simple. I want you to look up the word Bayyinah from the Arabic English dictionary, this one over here. Just read it. That's it. That's your homework. Read through that few paragraphs that speaks about the word Bayyinah. Look at the various derivatives of the word. Try to get a better understanding of the word. See how many times it is used in the Quran. See some of the contexts in which it is used. Just get a nice feel for studying a single word of the Quran. Okay, that's the one thing. The second thing is to go to Al-Fawzul Kabir fi Usul Tafsir and just read chapter 1 for me. Just chapter 1. As much as you can of chapter 1. The first page is a summary of the entire chapter. The first chapter, this is on page 11, explanation of the 5 sciences. Okay, in Arabic, it's the 5 themes, right? Either way. And just get an understanding of this. Firstly, from the summary, and then you can read as far as you can in chapter 1. Chapter 1 is not very long, which basically elaborates that summary that you just saw there. And it ends where? Let's see quickly. Okay, let me just look at the index. Yeah. Chapter 1 would end at page 27. If you can read that far, great. If you can't, just read as far as you can in the first chapter, and we can have a discussion about that. But these are the 5 themes that I feel we would basically rely upon going forward in our upcoming durus, inshallah ta'ala. And then don't worry with Ma'arif al-Quran yet. It's there for you, but we will read it together in class, and you don't need to worry about reading that at home. That's all from me. If there are any questions, let's just see. How was the titles established? Okay, so there's a question here. How was the titles established? So when it comes to the titles of the Quran, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sahaba would speak about the surah, and in compiling it, in him telling them how to compile it, he would say, place this piece of revelation in that surah, place this piece of revelation in that surah, and they would generally use a term to refer to that surah as. So in that sense, we believe it to be divine because the Prophet ﷺ is telling the Sahaba about the surah and is naming it in that way. Okay, and interestingly, not directly related to your question, but it ties in, the tartib of the ayat, this is divine. So where each ayah fits into the Quran, that's divine. But interestingly, the tartib of the surah, as in which surah comes where, that is not all divine. Some of that was ijtihad. Most of it is divine in that the Prophet ﷺ recited things in a particular order, but the preponderant view amongst the Sunni scholars is in fact that a lot of the placements of the surah were ijtihad by the Sahaba, and they figured out where this should be put together. There are differences of opinion on the matter, however, and some believe that no, it is in fact from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's why you will find a lot of scholars like Nouman Ali Khan and others, there's even books written on how the one surah fits into the narrative of the other surah, and then the surah that comes before it and after it and so on. I tend to not rely on that because I believe in the view that it's actually mostly based on ijtihad, but that's just an added extra there. Don't worry too much about it. We can talk about that some other time if you're really interested, inshallah. If there are any other questions, you can ask quickly. If not, then I've been requested to ask you to join the other class with Malna Khalil, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan for your attendance, and shukran to Uncle Abbas and Brother Khanit and Auntie Nazwa and whoever else placed there. Put the cameras on, it helps. So it looks like I'm teaching a class as opposed to teaching my computer screen, which just makes me feel like an idiot. And excuse my appearance, I actually just, I was like really rushing to get to the class. I came in from a run and was running late. So barakallahu feekum, shukran for having me. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad subhanallah wa bihamdi subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdik nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam.
Wa
Jazakallah khair.
Waalaikumsalam.